Evil comes when you call his name. Here's your look at the NECA toys. This is the Candyman Farewell to the Flesh Retro Cloth Candyman. The Candyman arrives in New Orleans and sets his sights on a young woman whose family was ruined by the immortal killer years before. Retro Cloth Candyman includes head and rotting torso. A bit late to the game on this one, I'm afraid, but we'll be having a look at Retro Cloth Candyman right now. Somewhat ironic, the fact that we are also looking at Candyman right now with the recently released trailer for the upcoming Jordan Peele version of Candyman. I'm really excited for that. Nonetheless, Retro Cloth Candyman stands impressively at 8 inches in height and centimeters. For those fancying their measurements in centimeters, more than happy to oblige. You're looking at the figure standing 20.4, so almost 20.5 centimeters tall. Yeah, how cool was that new Candyman trailer? I probably watched it about 10 times already. It's going to be interesting to see how they play this out, because I almost feel like it's not a remake as it is a continuation of the story. What will be interesting is Tony Todd is in the cast, and maybe he represents just kind of the spirit of Candyman. The movie seems to focus more around Yahya Abdul-Mateen II's character, who becomes really fascinated with the Candyman, kind of like the same way Virginia Madison's character was obsessed with the Candyman in the first film. I'm wondering if eventually he sort of becomes the Candyman through his obsession of trying to find more about the character. Again, I'm really excited for this because I've been a big fan of Candyman over the years, more so the second than the other two. Nonetheless, let's have a look at the Retro Cloth release of Candyman. I was really excited also for this release from the folks over at NECA Toys. Came out really out of nowhere initially when we saw images surface of this guy. Hopefully down the road, it may mean we will get ourselves an ultimate version of Candyman. Nonetheless, first thing we'll have a look at is his lungs, or his rib cage. You can see that it is a decayed state, a slimy looking portrait of the Candyman's lungs. You can see that there's some bees going on there as well, some buzzing, moving around bees, usually the telltale sign that the Candyman is nearby. And this is essentially just a clamped piece. It's going to fit over top of his torso. I'll show you guys how that works in a second. Really a neat design. Some of Clive Barker's really fascinating aspects of Candyman is the hooked claw, the bees, the fact that when you cut him, he has bees that come out of him. It's a really interesting designed character. I always loved this guy quite a bit. If you look really close as I could possibly get it, is that too close? That's not close enough. There we go. You can see even like each individual little stripings of yellow have been applied, and there's wings there also for the bees. Some very small, intricate work, all handled well by the folks over at NECA Toys. You can see how it clamps in place. That will involve me moving his jacket out of the way. You don't really even necessarily have to move his jacket out of the way. You just sort of have to move the top pieces up like that, and move the other side up like that, and sort of then just clamp it around his torso, just like that. It pulls off the effect much better, of course, if you have as little of it showing as possible. Sort of just the reveal from the center section of his jacket, keeping the rest of it covered. Now, the effect also can work a little bit better if you can also make use of the interchangeable head that NECA Toys also included with Candyman. And a continuation of talking about bees, get a gander at all the bees buzzing their way out of Tony Todd's mouth. Back in the day, you gotta imagine this wasn't done with CG, so Mr. Todd himself had to endure the idea of having bees all flying around him and coming out of his mouth. Good job, Tony Todd. You would be doing it. I would not be doing such a thing. I have no problems with bees. I have problems with bees in my mouth and floating and buzzing around my eyes. That's just me. You can go ahead and take the head off the ball joint. Just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. I've noticed in the last little while that the heads are a lot easier to take off on these retro cloth figures than the way that they used to be. I think they've switched to a more user-friendly style of ball joint. And you can see there is Candyman in his full bee splendor. I'll probably just be displaying him with his arms up, asking the unsuspecting maiden, perhaps, will you be my victim? What a cool looking presentation of Candyman. It's a debatable topic, of course. I feel the need to almost want to pick up 2 of these so I could display him with the bees and sans les bees, without the bees. You can see the 2 different head portraits. Both are uncanny likenesses to Tony Todd. Again, it's just pick your poison, determine for yourself which way you'd want to display the figure, but both, I feel, are strong contenders. Really liking the way that both of them have been handled. For the rest of this review, we'll go ahead and take the chest piece off. We'll just put that to the side. We'll also remove the head that we just finished putting there. We'll replace back with the regular Tony Todd Candyman head. I've mentioned this, what was the last retro cloth figure I had a look at? Oh, I know what it was. It was Russ Thorn from Slumber Party Massacre, which I just recently rewatched. Posted it on my Twitter and Instagram if you guys are following me over there. But I did mention when we had a look at the Russ Thorn figure, and I want to continue that talking point when we have a look at Candyman here. I don't know if NECA has changed the factories in which these figures are being done at, but I have to say there's been a vast improvement with paint applications for all the portraits. That's a lot of P's on all of these recent releases. I mean, the paint is really clean and polished perfectly on Tony's portrait here. Again, that's a lot of P's. Sorry for that, I'm spitting all over you. The paint is really done nicely on this guy. The older retro cloth figures were sort of plagued with problems of sort of like tacky and muddy looking paint. And I must say, as you can probably see, the proof is in the pudding, Tony Todd or Candyman definitely does not have that problem in the slightest. You can see that there's the slightly more darkened areas around his eyes and the slightly discoloration of the purple lips. Really a nice fine representation there of course, the Candyman. There's on the side. It's going to be definitely interesting to see, again, how the Tony Todd is going to play into the Candyman movie, or, again, if it's just going to be a sort of a baton passing over to the newest Candyman. That's definitely going to be very exciting to see. The rest of the other telltale signs of this particular killer is the fact he's got this long-tailed, long jacket that has the fur trim. It basically wraps its way around the whole bottom part of it, runs itself up the middle, and then he has the very noted broad collar, as you can see right there. Inside, not something you tend to see too much of, is he has the more kind of vintage style shirt and tie. Along with that, he's got the kind of checkerboard, small checkerboard pants, alternating colors of gray and white. And he also has a pair of shiny shoes. I want to also note as well, point out to the fact that the new retro cloth figures have, of course, really changed drastically in the way of their foot articulation. I've mentioned in the past that I wish NECA would just simply switch to more of a ball joint system, and I certainly can't take any credit. I'm not going to take any credit for that, but NECA clearly is listening to their fans, because this guy, as well as some of the recent releases, all have ball joints, so you can actually adjust their feet and you can level them off, whereas the issues in the past have always been like the feet are slightly off or slightly on an angle, sort of caused problems when it came to standing these figures. Candyman definitely does not have that problem. On the one hand, he does have his shinier black glove, as you can see there, sort of in a be my victim sort of pose. I've tried to pull off that pose myself. Be my victim doesn't translate well to today's world. On the other side, though, on the other hand, Tony Todd, of course, I keep wanting to call him Tony Todd, Candyman, does have the severed off what was his hand. Now, sadly, it's just a stump. The stump, as you can see, has some nails burrowed into the stump, the fleshed sections. And you can see also as well, the actual hook is not quite completely silver. It actually has been doused and kind of slightly covered with a film of red blood. It's sort of been kind of airbrushed over top of that. It's a really nice looking sight. If, of course, the sight of someone's severed off hand is impressive to you, this one definitely is very impressive, I have to admit. Something else that's neat, too, about this particular figure, and I didn't realize this until I got out of the packaging, is the bottom of the jacket all around here and making its way around to the other side. It's all a wireframe. It doesn't seem to be a wireframe anywhere from like the collar section down, but certainly on the bottom, there is a little bit of a wireframe. So if you want to get a more dramatic pose of having, you know, like the jacket blowing its way up down the sides like this, you can actually pull that off quite easily by making use of that wireframe. I think probably when it's all said and done, I kind of like the more concealed Candyman, not really revealing too much underneath unless I want to incorporate the bee torso. So I think for me, I'd likely probably just keep the jacket as closed tight as I possibly can get it, and maybe if anything just kind of have his arms up like this, displayed the figure like that. Or again, you can go back, rewind to the about halfway mark of this video, and you can of course display him with the bee mouth and the bee torso. I like the fact that NECA Toys gives us the possibilities and the potential that you can do that if you want to change him up one day, give him the bee mouth, give him the bee torso, or if you want to go back to the OG look of Candyman. Let's look at this guy's articulation. His head rotates all the way around. You sort of already saw how everything connected in place. It essentially sits on a very large ball joint that sits on a very long stemmed neck, which gives you a good amount of posability. Unfortunately, though, because the underbody, they went with a brown color, it doesn't quite match, obviously, the same coloring that they used for his face. It's interesting, though, that the face has only been painted to about here, as you can see, and the back section of his head matches the coloring of his neck. I wonder why they actually did that. I mean, from the front, you're not going to see it. From the side, you certainly will, but from the front, you're not. And of course, if the neck is covered up perfectly, you're probably not going to see that imperfection. I just feel the need to mention it, though, to you. Candyman also has an upper torso ball joint, something that's new also to the new retro cloth figures, and he also has a waist swivel. The arms move outward. You can move them forward, and you can move them back. You can probably guess it, though, they are a little on the limited side, just due to the nature of the fact that there's a lot of fabric that's going to be bunching up as you try to move his arms. But like I said, the arms move out at about a 90-degree angle. They move forward and they move back. He has a swivel at the bicep and a single hinge in the elbow. I want to mention he does have a rotation in the hand, though, again, not quite a hand. He does have it on this side, certainly on his real hand, not the hook. Keep wanting to pick off that little bit of fluff. As for his legs, let's just move his jacket out of the way here. He does split at the legs as such. It's about as far out as you can get it on the legs. He has swivels on the top cuts of both thighs. He does single bends in the knee. And then again, drawing your attention to the new articulation. Oh, I love the fact that they've changed these. He does have the ankle pivot, and you can move the feet certainly up and down. I feel as if I would be biased to say I love this figure, being the fact I'm such a big fan of Candyman and super excited for the new Jordan Peele release of the new Candyman. Probably not likely going to be a remake, just a continuation. It would be smart if it was just a continuation from Candyman 3. Okay, maybe Candyman 2. We can just completely forget about Candyman 3. I feel I might be biased, but I think at the end of the day, this is a nice looking figure. Probably, maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, a precursor to maybe getting an ultimate Candyman. So if your fancy isn't retro cloth, it may not be everybody's cup of tea. Maybe down the road, sometime soon, and with the release of the new Candyman, NECA Toys may eventually give us an ultimate Candyman in a regular 7-inch plastic figure. Fingers crossed, I would definitely be on board for that, but I'm still digging what they've done with the retro cloth release of Candyman. He is a nice looking figure. Oh yeah, what are you going to do? Release the dogs? Or the bees? Or the dogs with the bees in their mouth? And when they bark, they shoot bees at you? Well, go ahead. Do your worst. Sorry, I was just thinking about The Simpsons. Every time I think of Candyman, I think of bees. And when I think of bees, I think of that quote from The Simpsons. Anyways, what a great looking figure from the folks over at NECA Toys. A personal favorite of mine, a personal favorite film franchise, though short in only three films, with the last being complete garbage. Do yourself a service if you've never watched the Candyman films. I really feel you can watch, obviously, the original and what I feel is a superior sequel with Farewell to the Flesh, and just completely avoid the last one. Was it Day of the Dead? Who cares? The last one was garbage. Anyways, I'm really super excited for the new released Candyman. I'm hoping, still fingers crossed, that it's going to be a continuation of the same lore, the same universe. And that's not necessarily reboot anything if we don't really have to. Tony Todd for me is always going to be Candyman, but it's an interesting prospect, the idea that perhaps his essence gets carried on to somebody else. I'm calling it right now. I'm probably going to be wrong. This release from the folks over at NECA Toys is an exquisite, faithful tribute to the original Candyman character. I like the fact that he does have the interchangeable heads, and of course he does have the bee torso. This is something, of course, you can remove from the figure, which was smart. The fact that they actually just made it as a separate piece that you could take off completely, it wasn't something permanently in place. The interchangeable heads, like I said, are a good alternative. One is very different from the other, so if you want bees on your Candyman, you can pull that off. Sans le bees, you can completely leave that off completely. Still not sure why the paint is slightly stopping around the ear area where the front of the face is painted. The back of the head seems the same coloring as the rest of his brown body, but other than that, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. It's a nice release, and hopefully we may get ourselves an ultimate version of Candyman. Again, fingers crossed. If you managed to pick up this one for yourself, let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of the NECA Toys Candyman from Farewell to the Flesh. A fantastic sequel. Just avoid the third one like the plague. If you guys are new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and move next door, not literally, but head on over to the bell notification and switch that on so that when future videos are coming onto this channel, you won't be the person that's missing out. There's going to be a whole bunch of NECA stuff lined up coming soon, so keep your peepers peeled for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.